Hi everyone, it's Natalie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you all some of the books that I've read recently. But before I get into that, please remember that down below in the description I will have links to resources of what you can do to support the Black Lives Matter movement. The first book I'm going to be talking about is Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers. This is the third book in the Wayfarer series. Now, the Wayfarer series is more like companion novels versus a series of events that you have to follow chronologically. But regardless, this book doesn't have a lot of plot, so I'm going to read the description of it from Goodreads so that you can have somewhat of an idea of what this book is about. Hundreds of years ago, the last humans on Earth boarded the Exodus fleet in search of a new home among the stars. After centuries spent wandering empty space, their descendants were eventually accepted by the well-established species that govern the Milky Way. But that was long ago. Today, the Exodus fleet is a living relic, the birthplace of many, yet a place few outsiders have ever visited. While the Exodans take great pride in their original community and traditions, their culture has been influenced by others beyond their bulkheads. As many Exodans leave for alien cities or terrestrial colonies, those who remain are left to ponder their own lives and futures. What is the purpose of a ship that has reached its destination? Why remain in space when there are habitable worlds available to live? What is the price of sustaining their carefully balanced way of life, and is it worth saving at all? So I rated this book 4.5 stars. I absolutely love Becky Chambers, and this book was a breath of fresh air. I fucking loved it. Becky Chambers is a master of writing the mundane and making the mundane interesting and engaging. Like, seriously, when I tell y'all that this book has no plot, it really doesn't. It's very much considering those questions that are mentioned in the summary. Eventually you figure out a little bit of plot that's holding this book together, but honestly it's not much. All that is to say that this is a character-driven novel. If you're not into character-driven novels, don't pick this up. And honestly, I would say don't pick up books by Becky Chambers because she really focuses and narrows in on characters. That's the real thing that she's exploring in her novels, apart from themes. But my point here being is that it is not plot because it's not really what she's trying to go for anyway. I do have to say that even though I rated this 4.5 stars, I did struggle to get into it in the beginning. It was kind of confusing because we had a lot of characters and it was hard to tell how they were all related to one another and why I was supposed to care about them. Eventually though, you did see how they were related and you started to get invested in the characters, so you were interested in what they were doing and why they were doing it. At the end of the day, I love this book because I love characters and I love the characters in this story. So that's why I would definitely recommend picking up Becky Chambers if you really like character-driven stories, because I think she has always a very dynamic set of characters that make you want to learn more about them. P.S. This book also low-key broke my heart in an unexpected way, and I was just shook about it. It came like halfway through the novel, so it was kind of like, wait a second, I'm supposed to be sad now? So just a little warning sign about that. The next book I'm going to be talking about is This Is Kind of an Epic Love Story by Kaysen Callender. This is basically a childhood friends to lovers story. In it, we have Nathan and Oliver reconnecting and rekindling their friendship. As they start getting closer, they start thinking about what exactly they want their relationship to be. Do they just want it to be a friendship? Do they want it to be something more, etc.? I think another of the big things about this book is that it's very much also about our main character Nathan figuring out what he wants for his future and deciding for himself, hey, this is what I want to do and these are the steps I'm going to follow to make that happen. I rated this book 3.5 stars. It's definitely not a book that's easy for everyone to love. I think one of the primary reasons for that is because our characters are not completely like unproblematic. They make decisions that are messy, that are questionable, that you're kind of like, why are you doing this? And they don't always get repercussions for those actions. So it's the kind of book that definitely the people who think YA should be a genre that poses role models for its audience will not necessarily vibe with. Usually I lean more towards like characters should get repercussions for doing certain actions, for making certain decisions, but in this this one, it really worked for me for some reason, that the characters were just allowed to be messy and to have dynamic relationships with one another that were not resolved easily and simply. I think one of the main critiques that I've seen with this book is that there's a lot of cheating in it, and the characters don't really engage in a conversation about cheating that's in any way productive or conducive to the answer of like, cheating is not good. And as someone who traditionally doesn't like cheating narratives, I was actually surprised by the fact that I could kind of understand and relate to the characters being in this space. But I also think that the main reason why I was able to relate and understand the characters in this space was because they were young, okay? They were teenagers, so I understand why they were confused and frustrated and they didn't know quite what to do. So I see a lot of people who are very sensitive to the topic of cheating not really appreciating that shit, and I understand, okay? I really do. On a personal level, the actual topic that did bother me though was the whole conversations around sex. I definitely felt like Nathan was being pressured into having sex. His best friend, who is his ex-girlfriend, is always like, oh my god, you need to have sex, you need to find a partner, you need to have sex. And there were occasional like throwaway comments of like, well, you don't have to if you don't want to. But Nathan was clearly very uncomfortable and very much not ready to have sex, and I never felt like in any of the situations in this book where he's building up towards having sex or where he's talking about sex, he was actually comfortable with it. I think what the author was trying to go with though with Nathan's relationship to sex is kind of like he wanted to have sex, but he was very self-conscious, and so that's what was happening. He was getting in his head because he was self-conscious about doing the wrong thing while having sex, but it still felt uncomfortable, at least for me while I was listening to this story, because he had that conflict. If he had been completely sex positive and just been like, yeah, I really do want to have sex, then I wouldn't have been as frustrated while listening to the story. Now, there were two main things that I really enjoyed about this book. One of them is the relationship Nathan and Oliver had. The second one is that we have a character who's deaf / hard of hearing. I can't remember if he labeled himself as deaf or hard of hearing, but point is we had that representation, which is not very common at all. So I was into that. To go more deeply into Oliver and Nathan, I enjoyed their relationship because despite the cheating elements going on, I really like friends to lovers. I just really vibe with that trope, okay? I just love it. I love the fact that they were both artistic types. Oliver was into photography, Nathan was into screenwriting, and I liked seeing them bond over that and kind of fuel each other's creativity. With the deaf / hard of hearing representation, I'm not deaf or hard of hearing, so I can't say if the representation is good, and I wasn't really able to find easily any reviews that were own voices, so I don't know if it was handled as well as it could have been, but it was really a breath of fresh air to read a novel where the love interest was deaf / hard of hearing, because really it's not that often that you see that, basically hardly ever, and it was just fucking iconic. I loved it. I really appreciated having that in the story. So to wrap things up, I actually enjoyed this story, but I was also very critical and could understand why other people might not enjoy it, and I myself had some issues with it. At the end of the day, I kind of understand what the author was going for, and so I appreciated the story and was still able to come out of it having positive feelings towards it. The next book I'm going to be talking about is Burn by Patrick Ness. Let me read the synopsis of this book because I really don't know how to describe it in my own words. Sarah Dewhurst and her father, outcasts in their little town of Frome, Washington, are forced to hire a dragon to work their farm, something only the poorest of the poor ever have to resort to. The dragon, Casimir, has more to him than meets the eye. Sarah can't help but be cautious about him, an animal who supposedly doesn't have a soul but who is seemingly intent on keeping her safe, because the dragon knows something she doesn't. He has arrived at the farm with a prophecy on his mind, a prophecy that involves a deadly assassin, a cult of dragon worshippers, 2 FBI agents in the hot pursuit, and somehow Sarah Dewhurst herself. I rated this book 3.5 stars. I was lukewarm about it. Honestly, I love Patrick Ness, but this just kind of fell flat for me. I didn't really connect to the story. When I started reading it, I was kind of reading the words and I was like, I guess this is something that I'm reading, but I don't see why. I think one of the major reasons for that is because reading this story, especially during this time, it felt kind of strange. Our main character is black and she has a love interest who's Asian, and I felt like this story, part of the perspective being from a black character, not only a black character but a black girl, kind of didn't fit well. Like, I don't think, but again, I'm not an Own Voices reviewer, so fuck if I know anything, but I don't think that Patrick Ness ultimately did anything harmful in this book, again from my biased perspective, but it just didn't feel as genuine as it could have been, honestly. So that's why ultimately I wasn't the biggest fan of the story. Usually I'm very easy to please. Usually Patrick Ness could do almost anything and I would be like, thank you, good sir, you have fed me well. But this one just didn't hit the mark for me. Another thing is that I felt like the metaphor the dragons were supposed to represent and the parallels being drawn between black people slash POC and the dragons were weird. They were just strange. I don't know. I couldn't work them out myself because, again, not an Own Voices reviewer, but it was definitely something that I felt while reading the story. I was kind of like, what exactly are you doing here, Patrick Ness? I don't know. Ultimately, I rated this 3.5 stars because it wasn't unpleasant to read, but I just never felt attached to it. I never felt super involved. The next book I'm going to be talking about is An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. Once again, I'm going to be reading the summary of it from Goodreads because it's another book that I'm struggling to figure out how to summarize, so might as well give you the official summary. Aster lives in the low-deck slums of the HSS Matilda, a space vessel organized much like the antebellum South. For generations, the Matilda has ferried the last of humanity to a mythical promised land. On its way, the ship's leaders have imposed harsh moral restrictions and deep indignities on dark-skinned sharecroppers like Aster, who they consider to be less than human. When the autopsy of Matilda's sovereign reveals a surprising link between his death and her mother's suicide some quarter century before, Aster retraces her mother's footsteps. Embroiled in a grudge with a brutal overseer and sowing the seeds of civil war, Aster learns there may be a way off the ship if she's willing to fight for it. I rated this book 5 stars. It was absolutely stunning, incredible, amazing. I was obsessed from the beginning to end with it, and I'm illiterate. Because of it, I have been made illiterate because I hardly am able to put my thoughts together of why I love this and how I can convey to you all why I loved it so much. Once again, this is very much a character-driven story, and as you all know, I'm a slut for character-driven stories, so this just hit me right where I wanted it to. It was fucking amazing. Our main character Aster and her 2 closest friends, Theo and Giselle, were fucking beautiful. They were amazing. They were all so dynamic and complex and interesting. Like, seriously, I've never read a book with characters that are so very different from one another without feeling like they were just caricatures of one specific character trait. They really, really were. Like, there's no words for it, honestly. There's no words for it. If I remember to, I'm gonna link down below as well a tweet I think that Bow Ties and Books made about all the representation in this book, because I cannot remember all of it, but it's incredible. It has a lot of diversity, not just because the main characters are black and biracial as well, but also because the main character is on the autism spectrum. She's intersex. She has a love interest. Theo is the love interest, and he's gender non-conforming, I believe. So there's so much diversity in this book that's done so fucking amazingly. What are words? I don't know what words are because it was fantastic. If I have one complaint about this book, it's not even really a complaint because it's something that I don't care that much about. But definitely the science element of this sci-fi novel went completely over my head, but I don't care. I honestly don't give a shit because it was still a fantastic story and I could still mostly understand what was going on in the narrative. At the end of the day, whether you're a character-driven reader or not, I would highly, highly recommend giving this book a shot because honestly, it's just beautifully written. written. It has incredible and interesting characters, and ultimately the story of Aster and the relationship she's trying to figure out with her mother and her mother's past is just so good. It's just so good. I do have to say though that this is also low-key heartbreaking. I felt my heart ache while I was reading this, but I was so happy at the same time that I was feeling human emotion while reading this. So yeah, go pick up An Unkindness of Ghosts. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you've read any of these books, please let me know down in the comments below what you thought of them, or let me know if they're in your TBR. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you would like to follow me on any of my social media, I will leave the links to that down below in the description. But for now, see you next time.